Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope everybody has had a great holiday. Today I'll be covering my top 10 films of this year, 2022. This year has been a great year for films, with the second half being the best in my opinion. At around May time I was a little worried because most of what I had seen was pretty bad, with a couple of exceptions of course, but the latter half has given us some incredible films to talk about. I watched a total of 25 films released this year, and I'll start by simply listing my picks for 25 through to 11, and then I'll give more detail about my top 10. In 25th place I have Smile, a horror film directed by Parker Finn and starring Sosie Bacon. I thought this movie was very bad, and I wish I hadn't gone to the cinema to see it. I won't be watching this film again, and I don't recommend that anyone else watches it. In 24th place is Thor Love and Thunder, a film directed by Taika Waititi starring Chris Hemsworth, and is the 29th installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I have a review of this up on my channel, so if you're interested, check that out. In 23rd I have Jurassic World Dominion, a film directed by Colin Trevorrow and starring Chris Pratt alongside Bryce Dallas Howard. This film brought back three characters from Spielberg's classic and the first film in the franchise, Jurassic Park. I also have a review of this film on my channel, so if you're interested in this. In 22nd I have placed The Great Man, the Russo brothers' new action film, which stars Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans. This film had some good points to it, however it was mostly bad, unfortunately. I have a full review of this film on my channel, so if you're interested, check it out. In 21st I have Werewolf by Night, the first of the Marvel Special Presentation movies. This was an alright film, but personally not my cup of tea. This movie did have a couple of good points, one of which being it's directed by Michael Giacchino in his debut directorial credit, and the second, it was actually quite stylistic and it did look nice. In 20th place I have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. This film was directed by Sam Raimi, and you can definitely tell that it's one of his films. It's got a lot of style to it. Of the three Marvel films that I watched this year, this one was my favourite by quite a mile. Each film from now on I actually liked and enjoyed watching, so there aren't any more films that I wouldn't recommend. In 19th place I have The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. This was directed by Tom Gormican and stars Nicolas Cage playing Nick Cage alongside Pedro Pascal. In 18th place is X, a good little horror flick directed by Ty West, starring Mia Goth as the protagonist. I'm not a huge fan of horror, however I can see how and why some people would have this film higher on this list. In 17th place I have See How They Run. I actually enjoyed this film a lot and I only watched it a couple of days ago. It was a great little light-hearted murder mystery film. It was directed by Tom George and stars Sam Rockwell, Saoirse Ronan and Adrien Brody. In 16th place I have Nope, Jordan Peele's newest and third film. It starred Daniel Kaluuya and Keke Palmer. Again, some people will have this in their top 10. However, I didn't click with it and I thought it was technically incredible, but the narrative and plot didn't grip me. And throughout the over 2-hour runtime, I did find myself bored in places. Again, there is a full review of this film on my channel if you want to hear more of my thoughts. In 15th place is The Black Phone, my favourite horror film of the year. It was directed by Scott Derrickson, known for his great horror movies, and it stars Mason Thames and Madeleine McCraw alongside Ethan Hawke as the villain. The two child actors in this are incredible and have so much potential, Madeleine McCraw especially. I've also done a review for this film, so feel free to check that out. In 14th place I have Prey, the fifth film in the Predator franchise. I liked this a lot and I was surprised that this was the case considering how bad the previous movie was. It was directed by Dan Trachtenberg and starred Amber Midthunder. In 13th place is Bullet Train, an action comedy directed by David Leitch, who is known for films such as Deadpool 2 and Atomic Blonde. This film starred Brad Pitt and Aaron Taylor Johnson, and was great up until the third act of the film. I think if it was 20 or 30 minutes shorter, then it would be around about 8th on this list. In 12th place, I have Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. I thought this film was really good, and although I think the story got a bit bland towards the end, overall I enjoyed it. It was unique, and that is to be expected with films directed by Guillermo del Toro. I loved the twists and changes that he made to the original story, and it was quite enjoyable. I recommend you watch it. Finally, in 11th place is Glass Onion: A Knives Out Mystery. I'm a huge fan of Edward Norton, so I loved seeing him in this. The cast as a whole was pretty well picked, and the film was funny, thrilling at times, and enjoyable throughout the whole 2-hour 20-minute runtime. That concludes my ranking of every film I watched this year which didn't make the top 10. Now let's get into my absolute favourites of the year, starting with Elvis, sitting in 10th place. Directed by Baz Luhrmann, Elvis was a great film starring Austin Butler as Elvis Presley and Tom Hanks as his blood-sucking manager. As is always the case with Baz Luhrmann's movies, they have immense style and are extremely aggressive on your eyes with flashy images, bright colours, and gold and silver as colours are used lots. Austin Butler's performance as Elvis was absolutely stunning, and I think he is a serious contender for the Best Actor Academy Award. I thought he was good in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a few years ago, however that was a minor role, but after being given a large role like this and a substantial amount of time to prepare for it, he absolutely knocked it out of the park. You end up forgetting that Elvis was actually any different than Butler's portrayal, and it's true that Austin Butler truly becomes Elvis for this role with the utmost commitment to accuracy. He even sings a couple of songs himself as opposed to them being fully lip-synced. I'm looking forward to seeing Butler in Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2 next year, and I hope he is going to be playing a significant part in the film in his role, Feyd-Rautha Harkonnen, who is an antagonist, so that'll be interesting to see. Overall, Elvis was a good film, and even if you're not a fan of Elvis's music like me, this was still worth seeing, as Baz Luhrmann's direction and Austin Butler's amazing performance in the titular role are both incredible. In 9th place is Boiling Point, a great little British indie film starring Stephen Graham and directed by Philip Barantini. I'm starting to become a big fan of Stephen Graham, as his performance in This Is England was great, and likewise his performance in this film was incredible too. This film was released in the summer of last year technically, as it premiered at the Cardiff International Film Festival. However, it was only released in the United Kingdom in January of this year, so I'm considering it a 2022 film as opposed to a 2021 film. This film takes place in real time, as in the hour and a half runtime of the film is the same hour and a half depicted in the film. There aren't any time jumps or cuts, and in fact the film is shot in absolutely one take, so there aren't any shot cuts either. The fact that there weren't any cuts in the film meant that the cast had to stay in character for 90 minutes straight and had to stay fully focused throughout. During rehearsals, at first the actors weren't given any dialogue at all to work with, but rather they improvised during the rehearsals. Stephen Graham has said that in order to make a 90-minute scene seem as natural as possible, they had to improvise with the dialogue, so that if they made a mistake, which to be honest is inevitable, they could work around it. For me, I think this is an incredible achievement, and how the film kept the audience gripped for 90 minutes is incredible. It is an extremely tense film, and I can't wait to watch it again soon. In 8th place, I have the new Ron Howard film, 13 Lives. 13 Lives is based on the true story of 13 Thai schoolboys who get trapped in a network of caves when a rainstorm unexpectedly floods them and blocks their way out. Ron Howard is an interesting director for me because he has some really great films like A Beautiful Mind and The Da Vinci Code, but in some of his films he does leave a lot to be desired. 13 Lives, thankfully, I think is one of his best films, and I enjoyed it a lot. It stars Viggo Mortensen, Colin Farrell and Joel Edgerton as the main characters, and these three all play divers who are tasked with saving the boys from the cave in which they're trapped. Although being a long film, it didn't seem to drag, and kept my attention throughout the entire length. It was tense, and I found myself caring a lot about the events depicted. Despite it being a news story that I remember reading whilst it was actually happening in the summer of 2018, I paid no attention to the details back then, so it was incredibly interesting to see exactly how much of a logistical nightmare it was to save these young boys' lives. 13 Lives is an incredibly miraculous story which is put to film brilliantly here by Ron Howard, with a cast which all give excellent performances. I did enjoy this film a lot. The 7th film on this ranking is The Menu, a film directed by Mark Mylod, starring Anya Taylor-Joy, Ralph Fiennes and Nicholas Hoult. I saw this film in the cinema since it was a small budget original movie, not independent but still an original film with a relatively low budget of $30 million. Thankfully, it has made a good return on investment, making almost $70 million in the box office. I've spoken at length in other videos about why people should try to see original movies while they're in cinemas and not exclusively see blockbusters. The cast in this film was incredible, and I was already a big fan of Nicholas Hoult and Ralph Fiennes, however I hadn't seen much with Anya Taylor-Joy in. I had seen The Witch, however, and Split, and now having watched The Menu too, I do think that she is a pretty damn good actress, and I'm excited to see what other roles she picks up in the future. The Menu is a thriller comedy which focuses on the satire subgenre of comedy, something that seems to be becoming a lot more prevalent in films nowadays. It satirically criticises things such as class and food critic snobbery, and is quite hilarious in places. I reviewed this film on my channel after having watched it the first time, so if you want to hear more of my thoughts on it, and a more in-depth opinion of what I liked and disliked, please feel free to check out that video. My 6th favourite film released this year was The Banshees of Inisherin, directed by Martin McDonagh, a director of whom I'm a huge fan of. His 3 other films, 7 Psychopaths, 3 Billboards and In Bruges, are all very good and I enjoyed them a lot. The Banshees of Inisherin stars Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson as the 2 main characters, the same pairing seen in Martin McDonagh's In Bruges. These 2 were great in this film, just as they were before, and Brendan Gleeson is especially good when it comes to working with Martin McDonagh. In fact, he's also good when under the direction of Martin McDonagh's brother too. Brendan Gleeson starred in 2 of John Michael McDonagh's films, namely Calvary and The Guard, which are both also great films set in Ireland. Another great actor in The Banshees of Inisherin is Barry Keoghan. Although being relatively unknown prior to this film, he has had a couple of roles which I've seen. I enjoyed his performance in The Killing of a Sacred Deer, a film by Yorgos Lanthimos, coincidentally also starring Colin Farrell. I think he's great at playing socially awkward characters, as he does in both this film and The Killing of a Sacred Deer. With this in mind, I think he will bring a great and unique performance when he plays the Joker in Matt Reeves' sequel to this year's The Batman. We're now into my top 5, and in 5th place is Robert Eggers' 3rd film, The Northman. The Northman is a classic revenge story about a boy whose father is killed and who devotes his life to avenging his dead father. It stars Alexander Skarsgård in the titular role, and also includes other well-known actors such as Ethan Hawke, Nicole Kidman, Willem Dafoe and Anya Taylor-Joy. First of all, I love history and find it fascinating, and Norse history and mythology is no exception to my fascination. I absolutely loved the History Channel show Vikings, and jumped into watching this film with high hopes. I wasn't disappointed, and some experts have actually said that it is the most realistic depiction of Norse history in film. Despite the fact that I did love this film, I do have a few issues with this statement. The Northman focuses quite heavily on the magical and religious side of Norse mythology, which takes away from the realism for me. There are parts in the film where Skarsgård's character is unable to strike someone with his sword simply because his destiny states that the time is not right. This of course is nonsense and wouldn't happen in reality. Whilst the film may show what these Northmen believed in religiously, showing it in the film to be real makes the story seem way less accurate in my opinion. This film is brilliantly crafted with stunning landscapes, beautiful sets. The cinematography is great, and this film is dark, gritty, and has a grim atmosphere, which follows suit with Robert Eggers' other two films, The Witch and The Lighthouse. I have yet to watch The Lighthouse, but I do love The Witch, and I'm very much looking forward to his fourth film, Nosferatu, which is in pre-production at the moment, and is confirmed to be starring Nicholas Hoult. The fourth film on my ranking is Im Westen nichts Neues, or All Quiet on the Western Front in English, a German film set during the First World War. This is only the second German film I've ever seen, and what a film it is. I think this is by far the best war film I've seen since Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Basterds, released in 2009. Im Westen nichts Neues follows a group of friends who enlist in the German army during the Great War, full of excitement and patriotic passion. Only once actually on the Western Front do they discover the annihilation and horror of World War I. This film is so well made and the acting was incredible. The only actor I knew in this film was Daniel Bruhl, someone I'm always impressed by, and I particularly enjoy his performances in Inglourious Basterds and in The Alienist. I've watched this film in both German and the English dubbed version. I have to say that it is a much more visceral experience watching it in German. It's by far the most brutal war film I've seen in a while, and some of the scenes are extremely shocking and hard to watch, but I do think that that's a good thing. Between 1914 and 1918, real people, mostly teenagers and young adults, gave their lives and went through absolute hell for their countries and witnessed soul-destroying things. I think, personally, that it would be wrong to gloss over the grim details of their reality for the sake of making the movie appeal to a wider audience. Overall, it was interesting to see World War I from the eyes of a young German soldier, and this film was definitely unique compared to all other war films that I have seen. My third favourite film of the year was Matt Reeves' new film, The Batman. I thought this film was incredible, and as someone who isn't a huge fan of superhero films, I thought that it was very good, and people who usually wouldn't go near comic book movies can actually get a lot of enjoyment out of this film. Almost everything about this film was fantastic. The cinematography was extremely stylish, and as a fan of Matt Reeves already, it was great to see him apply the grittiness of some of his other films, like Cloverfield and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, to this film too. This is by far the darkest we've seen Batman on the big screen, and I absolutely love the atmosphere of Gotham when shown this way. The acting was exceptional. Robert Pattinson starred in the lead role of Bruce Wayne / Batman. However, the supporting cast was very strong too. Colin Farrell played the Penguin, a great villain, and is the third film featuring Colin Farrell on my top 10 this year. Paul Dano played the main villain, the Riddler, and as always his performance was great and particularly creepy, reminiscent of his role in Denis Villeneuve's Prisoners. I'm also a massive fan of Andy Serkis. He plays the role of Alfred Pennyworth in this film and has truly matched Michael Caine's previous portrayal in the character's shoes. Michael Giacchino's score is also spectacular and I think one of the most immersive film scores this year. It suits the gritty atmosphere that the visuals are giving off perfectly, and it is unique and distinct, which of course is always a good thing. I look forward to seeing Matt Reeves announced a sequel, however it may take a while to release due to the reshuffling currently happening at DC Studios and the uncertainty surrounding the studio's future. My second favourite film of 2022 is the long-awaited sequel to Tony Scott's 1986 film Top Gun, titled Top Gun Maverick. This film is the perfect example of how good Hollywood blockbusters should be considering the budgets given to them. It's no hot take that the box office is overwhelmed with crappy Hollywood blockbusters, with franchises like Marvel, Star Wars and Transformers seemingly releasing way too many films for a quality standard to be met consistently. The issue has grown so much over the past 2 decades that almost all Hollywood blockbusters made nowadays are terrible films. Thankfully, Top Gun Maverick is an exception and a great example of how high the bar should be quality-wise, considering the budget of these films. It brings back two actors from the first film, Tom Cruise back in the role of Maverick and Val Kilmer as Iceman. I'm not a huge fan of the original movie and only watched it after having watched the sequel. I wouldn't say that it's necessary to have seen the original beforehand, since they cleverly explain the crucial plot points of the first film throughout the sequel. Saying this, after watching Top Gun Maverick, I did watch the original on Blu-ray, and my experience watching the sequel after having watched the original was slightly better. The supporting cast was great, with actors such as Miles Teller, Jon Hamm and Ed Harris co-starring with Cruise. There literally isn't anything wrong with this film, and I think that anybody can enjoy it, which makes it unique. It's both thrilling and light-hearted, in the sense that if you pay full attention to the film, as a film critic would, you become emotionally attached to it and you lose yourself in the story. For people only casually watching it, it is also enjoyable because the plot has layers and it is understandable despite not paying much attention, albeit not as impactful. It is revolutionary in that the effects are almost entirely practical. All of the scenes showing characters in fighter jets in the sky are actually real and not CGI. They had to teach the actors to act whilst being in fighter planes, and the scenes seem so realistic, simply because they are real. The G-force which the characters would have been experiencing is so believable in the film because it's absolutely real and there for all to see. In a sense, it's not actually acting, it's exactly how it would be in real life. Joseph Kosinski has shown that he can take on massive projects and not crumble under the pressure of expectation, and deliver a film good enough to be regarded as much better than the original. After watching Top Gun Maverick, I checked out his film Only the Brave, also featuring Miles Teller in the cast, and this film I thought was great too, although it would be hard to top Top Gun Maverick. My absolute favourite film of 2022 was Ruben Östlund's Triangle of Sadness. I think this film is absolutely amazing, and I only have good things to say about it. Everything was great, the cast, the plot, the dialogue. It is so unique, it was funny and entertaining, and despite being 2.5 hours long, it held my attention fully all the way throughout. This film was such a surprise for me because I watched it with hardly any knowledge of the cast, nor the director. Woody Harrelson was in this film, and of course I know him, however his character didn't have much screen time and was fairly insignificant and unimportant regarding the film's narrative. The standout actor was Harris Dickinson, one of the lead characters, and his performance reflected exactly how his character would be feeling and the situations that he goes through. Dickinson's performance makes the character relatable, when, if played by another, this may not be the case. Charlby Dean also was good as the girlfriend of Dickinson's character, however the only other performance I particularly remember as noteworthy was that of Zlatko Buric. His chemistry on screen with Woody Harrelson was very entertaining, and they bounced off of each other perfectly to make the conversations taking place seem natural and believable, despite their conversations being, in actual fact, quite nonsensical. The plot is unlike anything I've seen before and centres around a couple's experience after winning tickets for a trip on a yacht. The cruise ends catastrophically and rather hilariously, leaving the passengers stranded on a desert island, and the film ends on a note comparable to The Lord of the Flies. Similarly to the writing of narrative, the writing of dialogue was very good and entertaining to the viewer in a similar fashion to how Quentin Tarantino keeps his viewers entertained and gripped through dialogue. Overall, this film is very enjoyable. It made me laugh out loud several times. It was unique, unpredictable and shocking, and it's a great experience to watch for the first time. There are some hilarious scenes in this film, and I think anybody would enjoy it. Humour is mostly satirical, however, even people who might not understand some of the jokes will still enjoy the film and find it entertaining. Triangle of Sadness is only available at select cinemas here in the UK, unfortunately, but I would implore you try and see it in theatres to help support the production of indie films within the industry. If you can't view it in theatres, it is available to watch on Apple TV streaming. That concludes my summary of the films I watched which were released this year and my top 10 favourites. I understand there are some supposedly very good films released this year which I haven't seen, such as Everything Everywhere All at Once, RRR, and Bones and All. However, while I plan to watch these at some point in the future, they don't appeal to me as much, therefore I wasn't in a rush to watch them. There are also a few films released in America which aren't yet available here in England, but I do look forward to the UK release of both The Fabelmans and The Whale. If there are any films that you think rival my top 10, please let me know your opinions in the comments below. That's all for today. Feel free to subscribe to support my channel if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.